Stop chasing. How to let the universe speak to you. Instead, here's a truth that'll rattle most people. Everything a person desperately chases tends to run faster in the opposite direction. It sounds almost crazy, doesn't it? That the very effort someone puts into forcing the life they want is, in fact, the reason it keeps slipping away. The universe isn't broken, the timing isn't off, and the person isn't unworthy. The problem is that the energy of chasing is fundamentally incompatible with the energy of receiving. What if, instead of running harder, the answer was to stop completely? To get still, to breathe, and to finally let the universe do what it's been trying to do all along? This is the beginning of real spiritual awakening, and what follows could be the most important thing a soul ever reads about personal development and inner peace. Topic 1. The hidden trap of control. There's a sneaky little lie that modern culture sells at full price, and almost everyone buys it without question. The idea that if a person just tries harder, pushes further, and controls every outcome, success and happiness will eventually show up. What's wild is that this very mindset, this white-knuckled grip on reality, is what blocks the natural flow of the universe from doing its job. The closed fist can't receive anything new because it's too busy holding on to what it already has, or what it thinks it should have. Think of someone who's been obsessively applying to jobs, sending 40 emails a day, refreshing their inbox every 10 minutes, running on coffee and anxiety, and somehow, the offer never comes. That's not bad luck, that's energy at work. The consciousness behind that frantic pursuit carries a frequency of lack, of desperation, of I'm not enough yet, and the universe, always the perfect mirror, reflects that same scarcity right back. Spiritual growth begins the moment a person recognizes they're not running towards something. They're running away from the discomfort of not having it. This is where self-knowledge becomes the most powerful tool in the room. The person who starts to examine why they chase, what fear lives underneath the obsession, is already steps ahead of the crowd. That kind of inner honesty isn't just brave. It's the very first crack in the door that separates a life of struggle from a life of flow. And here's the thing nobody warns them about. Once that door cracks open, what starts pouring through isn't chaos, it's clarity. And that clarity is just the beginning of something much bigger. Topic 2. The frequency of desperation. Energetic hypersensitivity is real, and even those who've never heard the term have felt it. It's that moment when a person walks into a room and immediately senses tension, or when they're around someone who's desperately trying to impress and it just feels exhausting. That uncomfortable feeling isn't imagination. It's energy being perceived in its raw form, and it works the exact same way in manifestation. When the soul is in a state of chasing, whether it's a relationship, a career, or a sense of worth, it broadcasts a signal that says, I don't have this yet, and that terrifies me. The law of attraction, one of the most misunderstood principles of spirituality, doesn't respond to words or vision boards nearly as much as it responds to that inner consciousness, the dominant feeling beneath the surface. Napoleon Hill understood this intuitively in Think and Grow Rich. He didn't say think about riches. He said become the person who already has them, in feeling and in being. The shift from desperation to alignment isn't a strategy. It's a transformation of identity. It's the moment the person stops performing for the universe and starts trusting it, moving from a place of, please give me this, to, I know this is already mine. That shift changes everything about how they walk, how they speak, how they show up, and the world without fail begins to respond differently. What exactly happens inside that shift, though, in the body, in the mind, in the soul, is where the real magic is hiding. Topic 3. The power of sacred stillness. In a world that glorifies hustle, telling someone to slow down sounds almost offensive. But here's the counterintuitive truth that the most awakened teachers, from Eckhart Tolle to ancient mystics, have been pointing at for centuries. Stillness is not emptiness. It's the most fertile ground there is. When the noise stops, the universe finally gets a signal through. Meditation isn't just a wellness trend. It's a technology for accessing the higher self. A simple practice: sit quietly for 10 minutes, place one hand on the chest, breathe slowly, and instead of trying to think about nothing, which, let's be honest, nobody actually achieves. Simply observe what rises. Books like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle or A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson offer extraordinary guidance for anyone just beginning to meditate and explore this dimension of consciousness. Those 10 minutes of honest stillness will reveal more about a person than 10 years of busy living. Mysticism has always known what science is only now confirming. When the nervous system relaxes, cortisol drops, and the brain shifts from fight or flight into a receptive, creative state. In that state, intuition sharpens, ideas arrive uninvited, and connections that seemed impossible suddenly feel obvious. This is what ancient traditions called the energetic portal, the inner threshold between the ego's frantic chatter and the soul's quiet wisdom. And inside that stillness, something extraordinary begins to speak. That voice, soft, sure, and unmistakably real, is where the next piece of this journey begins. Topic 4. How the universe actually talks. Most people are waiting for the universe to send a loud, dramatic sign, a lightning bolt, a billboard, or an angel showing up at the front door. But spiritual vision works differently. The universe is remarkably subtle, endlessly patient, and speaks primarily through patterns, feelings, and the quiet nudge of intuition that the mind too often overrides. Learning to read its language is one of the most rewarding aspects of personal growth. There are real, consistent signs that the universe is communicating, and they deserve to be taken seriously. The heart suddenly feeling alive when a certain path presents itself. A deep, inexplicable knowing that something is right, even when logic argues otherwise. The same idea, book, or name appearing 3 times in a week from completely unrelated sources. Or a dream so vivid it lingers for days. These aren't coincidences. They're the universe speaking in its native language, and awakening is, in large part, learning to become fluent in it. The practice of self-knowledge becomes essential here. Keeping a simple journal, just 5 minutes a day, noting unusual patterns, gut feelings, or recurring themes, is one of the most direct ways to begin recognizing the universe's voice. Over time, the person who does this consistently starts to see a map forming, a direction, a calling, a purpose that was there all along, quietly waiting to be noticed. But here's what nobody talks about. Recognizing those signs is only half the equation. The other half requires something that most people find genuinely terrifying. Topic 5. Surrender is a superpower. Surrender has a serious branding problem. In a culture that treats control as a virtue and vulnerability as a weakness, the idea of letting go sounds an awful lot like giving up, and that makes most people dig their heels in even deeper. But spiritual development has always known the difference between surrender and defeat, even if the rest of the world hasn't caught on yet. Real surrender, the kind that opens spiritual portals and catalyzes healing, isn't passive. It's an active, conscious choice to release the white-knuckled grip on outcomes and trust that the universe has a plan far more intelligent than anything the limited human mind can engineer. Think of it like this. A person standing in a river, arms thrashing, trying to swim against the current, exhausted, going nowhere. Surrender is the moment they stop fighting, let the river take them, and discover it was always flowing toward exactly where they needed to go. This is where inner peace stops being a concept and becomes an experience. When the soul genuinely releases the need to control, not just intellectually but in the body, in the breath, in the gut, something shifts. The person finds themselves lighter, clearer, and strangely more effective than when they were forcing everything. Spiritual awakening doesn't happen when life gets easier. It happens when a person stops needing it to. And that level of freedom, that genuine release, has everything to do with who a person truly is beneath the roles they've been playing. Topic 6. Meeting the true self. Here's where it gets really interesting and a little uncomfortable. Most people are living as a carefully constructed version of themselves, the version shaped by trauma, by other people's expectations, by the fear of not fitting in. Spiritual isolation, that aching sense of being fundamentally different, misunderstood, or out of place, is often not a problem to be solved, but a calling to look deeper. The true self doesn't chase because it doesn't need to. It knows its worth. It acts from inspiration rather than desperation. Getting there, though, requires peeling back layers, and that process, known across mysticism traditions as the Great Transformation, isn't always comfortable. Reading The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer is one of the most direct invitations into this process. Singer walks the reader right to the edge of the ego and asks, gently but firmly, who is the one watching all of this? Consciousness expands not when things are added, but when illusions are removed. Every false belief peeled away, every old wound honestly faced, every mask consciously set down. These are the acts that elevate the soul and bring a person into genuine alignment with who they really are. The universe isn't withholding anything from anyone. It's patiently waiting for the person to stop pretending to be smaller than they are. And once that true self is uncovered, raw, honest, and unafraid, the tools needed to stay in that space become indispensable. Topic 7. Practical portals to alignment. Knowing the theory is one thing. Living it is another conversation entirely. The good news is that accessing alignment, that state where the soul is in harmony with the universe and inner peace, is not just a good day but a baseline. Doesn't require a monastery, a guru, or a year-long sabbatical in Bali. It requires consistent, intentional practice using tools that are available right now, today. Meditation is the cornerstone, but it doesn't have to look like an hour of lotus pose silence. 5 minutes of mindful breathing first thing in the morning, before checking the phone, before the noise begins, is a profound act of spiritual development. The app Insight Timer is free and offers thousands of guided meditations for beginners. Journaling immediately after. Writing 3 things felt as genuine gratitudes, not performed ones, real ones, rewires the brain toward an energetic portal of abundance rather than lack. These 2 habits alone, practiced for 30 days, tend to produce changes that people describe as nothing short of a spiritual awakening. Beyond that, spending time in nature, deliberately without headphones, without agenda, is one of the oldest and most powerful forms of healing known to human experience. The trees, the water, the rhythm of wind, all of it carries a vibrational intelligence that syncs the nervous system back to its natural frequency and opens the consciousness to messages that city noise drowns out. These aren't romantic ideas. They're practical, actionable, repeatable anchors for staying connected to the higher self in the middle of daily life. And when these practices become habits, when alignment stops being an event and becomes a way of being, life takes on a quality that can only be described one way. Topic 8. When life begins to flow, there's a specific feeling that comes when a person finally stops chasing and genuinely begins to receive. And those who've experienced it say it's unlike anything else. It's not that problems disappear or that everything becomes magically perfect. It's that reality starts to cooperate in ways that feel almost too deliberate to be accidental. The right people show up. The doors that needed to open, open. The universe, it turns out, was never ignoring anyone. It was waiting for the signal to come through clearly. This is what living in flow actually looks like on a practical level. Acting from intuition more than obligation. Making decisions based on what expands the soul rather than what soothes the ego. Noticing synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences, not as flukes but as confirmation that the path is true. The person in this state doesn't feel like they're pushing their life forward. They feel like they're moving with it, like a leaf carried by a current that knows exactly where it's going. Consciousness at this level isn't a mystical concept anymore. It's a lived daily experience of enlightenment in the most ordinary, beautiful moments. And here's what's worth sitting with. This state isn't reserved for monks, mystics, or people who've had dramatic spiritual awakening experiences on mountaintops. It's available to anyone, the accountant, the single parent, the student pulling all-nighters, who decides in one quiet, honest moment to stop fighting the universe and start trusting it. That single decision, made sincerely and acted upon consistently, is the spiritual portal through which everything else enters. The transformation doesn't announce itself loudly. It tends to arrive the way the best things always do, quietly, completely, and right on time. A final word. The choice is alive right now. Everything explored in this journey. From the illusion of control to the grace of surrender, from the language of the universe to the power of living as the true self, points toward a single radical act of courage, the decision to stop, to breathe, to trust, to let spiritual growth unfold at the pace of wisdom rather than the pace of anxiety. So here's the question that deserves real, honest reflection. What is being chased right now that secretly feels like it's chasing back? What would happen if, just for today, the grip loosened? If the to-do list shrank, the frantic energy quieted, and the soul was finally given permission to simply be? Is it possible that the life that's been desperately sought is already standing just outside the door, and that the only thing keeping it out is the noise of the chase? The reader who feels this in their chest, that quiet yes, that little tremor of recognition, that's not just emotion. That's the universe speaking. It's always been speaking. The only question now is whether the time has come to finally listen. Apply this. Live it. Elevate your soul, because that decision changes everything. If this resonated, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because what comes next goes even deeper into the awakening journey, and missing it would be a shame.